Hey everyone, welcome to SVT time. Man, that was perfect timing that I got that time. Hey, welcome everyone. We are what can I say? It's Thursday. It's SVT time. This is episode number 29 of SVT time, and once again we have a special edition SVT Suite, which we're going to focus mostly on the SVT Suite. Before we get to all that, obviously, my name's Dino. I've got Dom with us here today, as always, my faithful co-host, partner in crime. And as all the guests are very special, but today is even more special because not only is it Eva Gardner joining us here today, but Eva, you insert crowd noise. Eva, you're like a two-time veteran of SVT time as well, so you've done this a couple of times. You've actually put up with Dom and I more than
I'm well rehearsed.
Well rehearsed.
Eva, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Everything
great.
Thank you. Everything's good.
I just realized at some point during this broadcast, I'm going to have to excuse myself and run upstairs to grab a copy of something that we will talk about because I can't bring it down just before we start this broadcast. So, anyways, man, it's good to see you. Everybody's happy and healthy, and things are going well.
Everyone's good. We're riding the wave. It's definitely been an interesting time, but it's it is what it is, and we're doing what we can with what we got.
Yeah. Now, speaking, you say doing what we can with what we got. You've been busy.
Yeah,
I've
been
doing an
busy.
album.
Idle hands,
What's that?
Idle hands.
Right, exactly.
Devil's Playground.
So, like I said, you were really instrumental in helping us with the SVT Suite. I thought Dom was coming up with a question there, but
just agreeing.
Yeah. You've had some time to live with it and work with it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Like, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And kind of what was your thought process when you're working with the suite?
I've been working with plugins for a while now anyway, right? And I do a lot of remote session work, especially in the last couple of years. And so I'm using these, dialing in my tone anyway, using plugins, using lots of different tools to get, but essentially an Ampeg sound, right? Sure. And so what was great about when the suite came along, it's like, we're going straight to the source now. We're using those rigs that we already know and love, and instead of trying to mimic it or get to a place that sounds like it, we're using it. We're using the rigs that we'd be using otherwise anyway. So I was just so happy that it exists now, and we're just straight to the source.
Yeah.
I was going to say, for those of you who don't know, Eva provided presets in our factory bundle, in our artists and producers presets. So thank you, Eva. They sound so good. And this is just one of them right now, called A Little Bite, which we can kind of dig into those later. But sorry, Dino, you had a question?
Yeah, no. Go ahead. I was wondering, do you have a playing example that you wanted to show, Dom, or is it?
No, I was just, in fact, I thought this screen was on. There we go.
There you go.
So yeah, you go into artists and producers, Eve Gardner right here, and then you can scroll through these great I love the modern rock one too, as well. I use that one a lot.
Awesome.
Some Gritty Beef. I love the Robotron as well. I think this has the Rocktiver on it.
Yep.
Now, were these sounds based off of anything that you use live, Eva, or anything that you use in the studio, or?
Yeah, these sounds were, just over the years, there's different, depending on what you're doing, you're dialing in different sounds for all kinds of different projects, right? So my thinking behind all these was to just do a variety of different sounds. You always need a good clean sound. The one with the Robotron one is just kind of a fun, get like the octave divider kind of vibe on there. Just the Boomtown's got more of like I do a lot like thumb style sometimes, to get that kind of tone. So just moving towards that direction, just getting a little bit of something for lots of different situations, and it's a good starting off point for what you need.
Yeah. So given everything that's gone on in the last couple of years, you say you're obviously doing more and more home sessions. And I think we're all doing more and more home sessions. Has this kind of forced you, or like you say, you were already messing around with plugins, but did this kind of force you to work more or look more into using plugins versus live amps in offsite studios, or?
Yeah, well, because I am doing remote stuff, at least it's a little bit more limiting than it would be if you were in a studio, right? Or in a studio with lots of different mics and lots of different amp choices. So moving into a DAW and having these options where you have all of these amps available and at your fingertips is just found it to be like just so imperative, because all your clients are different, right? The styles of music are different. What they're looking for is different. The tone is different. The style, all those things. There's lots of factors that are in play. So when you have these options to work with, you have these tools to work with, it just makes your job that much easier, and they'll be happier on the other end as well.
Right.
And I know, Eva, you were, I think the last SVT time that we had, you were kind of teaching yourself production for the most part, right? And digging into that.
I took a production course that I'm
still
learning. Yeah.
It was so funny when this came through, and I know you were saying you're doing that. I was like, this is perfect timing. She's like deep in these classes, and now she can make these presets, and they sound incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect timing.
Are you still taking that course, Eva?
I'm still in it. Yeah, I'm still, I duck in and out depending on what's going on. But like most of that, my last record, a lot of those songs were homework for my course. I had to turn in mixes.
Oh yeah.
And get feedback on my mixes. So the songs became a great way for me to to practice and to submit mixes and get feedback. And it was great because I was like, cool, I'm just gonna get it to a great place. And it was the perfect homework for the course, basically.
That's amazing. Yeah. Are your mixes the ones that made the final cut for the EP?
They are not. I handed them over to a professional, but but the cool thing is I was able to get everything to a really good place, right? Like the 85-90% of what you're hearing on that record, I did on my own.
That's awesome.
And I provided stems. I took it into a live studio and did real drums because I programmed everything. Had a real drummer play everything, redid some vocals, and then I gave stems for the rest of it. And then they mixed it. So for me to be able to get everything to a point where the input's good, everything sounds good, and it's a real gift to be able to do that. When so much of what we do is DIY anyway, right? We try to do as much as we can these days on our own.
Yeah. Did you play the guitars too on that?
Yeah.
They sound awesome.
Most of them.
Love the tones.
Thank you.
Really cool tones.
Right back. Now that we're into it, I'll be right back because I gotta show a copy of it. I'm gonna stop the camera here for 1 second.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I'll try not to say too many bad things about you. No, I absolutely love the guitar. I mean, bass and guitar tones.
Thank you.
But yeah, I was really impressed with the guitar stuff on there. I also love the art direction and all the artwork.
Awesome.
What was your mindset behind that? It's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a photographer friend who was out with us on a Pink tour actually, and he did Pink's last album cover. So I got him to do a shoot and kind of come up with some stuff. And then my friend Josh Berwanger, who helped me produce the record, is also a graphic artist. So he helped me finalize all the art, and it was a team effort. So it was nice to work with other people on such an insular project.
Yeah. I love the artwork. And there it is right there.
There it is. On vinyl.
On vinyl.
So cool.
And I will say this, the reason this has been on our turntable since we received it, because I inherited this old console turntable, this old Magnavox turntable from my mom. And so it sits up in our living room, and every Sunday we make it a point to not turn on the TV on Sunday morning, and we spin vinyl. And
love that.
And we just listen to stuff. So this has been on there for like the last couple of Sundays.
That's so cool.
We've just been enjoying it. So it's good to, number one, have vinyl from a friend. And
that's
it's
really cool
awesome too. So yeah.
Did you start it out on 33 instead of 45? I was like,
well, no, you know what? And it actually sounded pretty cool.
So you did.
I'm listening to it going, this doesn't sound anything like Eva.
Yeah.
Like, I know your singing voice, and I'm like, man, that's that. And then I had to check. I was like, oh, dummy.
45. Yep.
It's the dark matter version.
It's the very dark matter.
It's not the kind of experience you want to have. You have options.
But somebody was telling me, a friend of mine, we did the same thing with Atlanta Rhythm Section, Imaginary Lover. If you play it at 33, which is what you're supposed to play it at, it sounds fine. If you play it at 45, it actually sounds like Stevie Nicks is singing.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
it's like,
cool.
It's not a joke either. It's like when you play it goes, that's Stevie Nicks. It's gotta be. It's an absolute trip. So yeah, just food for thought.
That's awesome.
Anyway.
One of my favorite songs from the artist Washed Out, the Portlandia theme song, is like an old classic 80s song that is slowed down like to a third of the tempo or something. It's
is that what it is?
Crazy slow. Yeah. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. If you look up the original, it is mind blowing how different the actual, and it's like pretty much all the music is just that slowed down.
That's
interesting.
Fun. Wow.
I'll have to revisit that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Now, Eva, do you think at some point, I know I had asked you this earlier too, but do you think you'll tour or at least gig in support of this?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to do something this month, like in January, and that all kind of went away. So I would like to at some point, just see what happens. Right now, it's been a tricky time getting something together, getting a band together, rehearsing, playing gigs for that. Just didn't seem like a good time. So I would like to. Yes, okay. I'm putting it out there, hopefully at some point, but we'll see.
Put it out in the universe and see what comes back, as they say. That would be cool, though. That would be very cool. So what else is going on as far as local gigs? Any words on touring?
Yeah, so I've been doing local stuff. I work with the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, so I've been doing stuff with them. Did a camp a few months ago and have something coming up with them in a few weeks. So I've been working with them. I've been doing private gigs. I work with Mark Schulman, the drummer, Tegan Sara. So he has something called Rockers Collective, which is a collective of musicians that get together, and when they're not touring or not working, we'll get together and do private gigs, basically corporate gigs, whatever it is. We did like Spectrum's Christmas party in December. So we're always doing stuff like that, which are really fun. And we have possibly some stuff coming up with them, some private gigs. So that's fun, just to keep things moving when we're not on a big tour. And Pink just announced that she's doing Bottle Rock Festival in May.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, they just announced announced the lineup. So that's exciting. Very cool. There's a couple things coming up. It's really good, something to look forward to.
That Musicians Collective idea is genius. That is so much better than when I was off tour years ago. I used to do the Rock and Roll Movers thing. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Oh, that
Yes.
is not fun.
Back, like if your back wasn't already broken from moving,
Yeah.
up, right?
Exactly. It's just like, oh, are you done moving amps? Let's go move some furniture for some other people. And it's typically always like Silver Lake, like east end of LA. So a lot of the houses are older and like tons of stairs, very vertical movement. So I didn't do that for long, but yeah, I would much prefer just getting together and playing with other musicians. It's a little more rewarding.
So it was literally moving furniture.
Yes.
Nice.
The gist is it's a bunch of like off tour musicians that typically move for other musicians, like other big producers and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I remember at one point Ampeg was talking about doing a roadie competition.
Nice.
And we were like, we wanted to get like some of the world's most renowned and famous roadies, or I don't like using the word roadies, but techs, or and it was like we were discussing stuff like we're going to have an SVT toss. We're going to see like all these silly competitions, but then we looked at the liability involved, and like, well, if somebody hurts themselves,
yeah.
a lot of trouble.
Speaking of, we have somebody, Chris says that he or she just got their first CL and fridge this year, 810. So any downside of using pedals, or pedals, overdrive, fuzz, whatever, hard on the speakers, they are not. If you're going through the rig, you should be totally fine. But bringing that back around to Eva, what are some of your go-to pedals right now in your live rig?
Yeah, my live rig, I have a Turbo Rat that for whatever reason through the years, I feel like live has with a lot of pedals, like I love so many different like fuzz pedals and stuff out there, but I feel like when you're playing with a band and you kick the pedal in, the bottom drops out, and the bass drops out, and then you're like, cool, it sounds cool, but there's no beef to it. There's no so the Turbo Rat I found is a great balance of that, where it's got the good tone, but there's still a bass player in the band.
Yeah.
So that's
I love that. I think that is the trickiest thing with distortions with bass, for sure.
Yeah, it's a fine line for sure. Yeah. Like they sound great if you're on your own and it's just you playing, but once the rest of the band's in, that bottom is hard to hold on to.
Yeah.
I just had a question. I'm having a senior moment here. Dom, cover for me quick.
Chris, just to reiterate, throw as many pedals as you want at your CL. You'll be fine. And the 810, it'll break you before you break it.
Especially if you're a rock and roll mover.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Exactly
right.
Mm-hmm.
And Eva, you've been famously always used 2 Pros and 810 cabs over the years as well. I know, in the last few years, and this is kind of the case with a lot of like big production touring bands, where people are going to clean stages and stuff is going underneath the stage, and more people are going into in-ears and shaker boards and things like that. Do you think at some point, like, and Dom and I have talked about this with other artists that have come on the show, about incorporating or figuring out a way to incorporate in some way the SVT Suite into a live show? Whereas, do we at some point see a production where there's not going to be any amps? Obviously we have modeling and, helixes and stuff like that, but, is it going to go eventually to even one step further, where you're going to be showing up at Madison Square Garden with a laptop, with an SVT plugin? I mean, is that theoretically happening?
That's a really interesting thought, because already when I play Keybase, I'm using Mainstage and a controller, as opposed to, for a while I'd have like a Moog or something like that, or an actual like a something that creates the sounds. But as of late, controller and Mainstage that's doing that same kind of thing. So it's not entirely implausible that the rest of it would go that way at some point. If it isn't already for some acts, I don't know, but it could already be headed that way. I mean, we're such in a tech forward world that it's possible. So and to be honest, I mean, the virtual stuff sounds really good also. You know, it sounds great. The sound is there, the tone is there. You're not moving
synth presets here if you want.
Yeah, there you go. You're not moving air like with an amp, but like you said, they use their shaker boards and stuff nowadays to get that vibration. So possibility.
It's you know, and like I said, we have this conversation all the time, and as an amp manufacturer, it's really it's a tough road to walk. And Dom and I talk about this all the time. It's like, you know, if we had a crystal ball that we could look 10 years into the future of bass amplification, you know, I know there'll always be tours and players and guys and musicians that are always going to want an amplifier behind them. I don't think that's ever going to go away, but you know, as productions get bigger, like I know, you know, the last Pink tour, you had a clean stage, and you know, everything was under the stage and in your ears, and you know, and you had a couple of shaker boards that you were standing on to give you that tactile feel of something vibrating, you know, of a bass amp vibrating the stage. But it's an ongoing discussion that I always bring up, and I just like to get people's inputs on it, because who knows where we're going to be in 10 years from now.
But interestingly, like we do have with the big production shows, because it's full production, there's so much happening with the, you know, it's a 200 person crew tour where there's like the video walls and everything. So yeah, that's a clean stage. But interestingly, when we do our festival runs, that's all amps. Like we go back to being a more band oriented mode. And we get to have our amps on stage, and it's very exciting. And I get to see my rig again behind me. It's the little things. It's the little big things. So we do go back and forth depending on what's going on. And I think it's but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out down the line, right?
Yeah. I think it's up to thank you. This is a great question, and I know. Am I pronouncing this right? Areli? Areli. Okay, because I know I'm friends with her on Facebook, and I know you're like, she's a big follower of Pink, and she's a big fan and a good friend. So I'll let you answer that question, Eva.
Yeah, my main source of inspiration when I write songs and music, you know, it's funny when I get inspiration for lyrics and song ideas just driving down the road. I'll see a billboard with a cool catchphrase, or even a bumper sticker. Like I've seen bumper stickers that are clever, and it'll spark a thought for a song. And I keep a running note of ideas in my phone, notes of just song ideas. Mm-hmm. So things can be like random like that, or they're experiences a lot of time. Just like a lot of songwriting and art comes from the personal well of emotion and experience and things like that. So it kind of comes from all over the place. Reading a book, being inspired by a great story or a show or something. Also, for sounds, you know, a lot of times I'll start a song by just playing with, I use Logic, so it has lots of loops and lots of fun sounds in there. So sometimes I'll just start with playing with the program and just say, oh, that's a cool drum loop. And then I'll build over it and say like, oh, I've never used there's such like random instruments in there, like weird flutes and cool string instruments and interesting synths and stuff. So I'll just start playing with weird sounds and sit there long enough, and an idea starts to take form, and you hopefully have a song by the end of it.
Yeah, interesting. Do you I know we kind of all face with this, but do you force yourself to sit down and write stuff, or is it more of a, hey, I'm in the middle of doing something. I got to drop what I'm doing because I got to get this idea down.
It can be both. But I mentioned this book a lot, How Artists Work by Mason Curry. And that book really inspired me. It talks about how different artists throughout the ages, their habits, right? And how they create. And we think so much like, oh, it's just inspiration strikes. And then we have the painting. But more often than not, the through line that I notice with most of these prolific artists is they have a habit. Normally, they get most of their work done like before noon. They're up at sunrise and they're doing the thing, whether it's, everyone from Chopin to Dali to Picasso, whoever. So that really inspired me to pick up the idea of a habit and a practice. And one of the great quotes, and he's got 2 books now. One was focused on female artists, the second one, but there's a great quote in one of his books. I can't remember who, but it said that I just wait for inspiration to strike. It just so happens that it strikes at 9 a.m. every morning.
Interesting. Okay.
Love that. Writing the book down right now.
Yeah. I did the same thing.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how artists work. Yeah, the daily habits of different artists, and it's just really inspiring. Some artists are not like that. Some work, they're more like night owls and just work whenever they feel like it. But more often than not, I notice most of them have a habitual practice, and that's how you get things done.
Yeah.
And it works that muscle. It's like working out at the gym. Like the more you work at it, the stronger you get, the more confidence you build. And it's the same thing with creating music or whatever it is you're working on. The more you do it, the channels open, you get better at it, and ideas flow more because you're in the flow.
Yeah.
So I try to work towards that. That's when I get the most done, is when I've got a habit.
Okay. That's a great routine too for this post-pandemic world that we're living in. It's just good to have that. Like you're kind of starting every morning the same and kind of like trying to harness that inspiration, starting on almost like a high note for the most part.
Yeah. Set your day up the right way. Right. And like set yourself up to win.
Yeah.
Like set yourself up to win, like even if it's a small win, and that sets the tone for your day.
Yeah, it's like you say, you get into these habits, and for whatever, like you say, if you're going to the gym, working out, if you're working on a line or working, I remember I used to get up at like 4:00 every morning when I was in school, and that was just my like quiet time, my tea time, where I would sit and work on my day's lessons, and and you don't see the immediate results or the immediate benefits of doing it. You have to kind of do it for a little bit until it becomes habitual, and then you see it happening.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It takes time, but also starting off with attainable things, right? Like what happens in the beginning with New Year's resolutions and stuff is like you have these like grand goals, and you might join a gym and work out for 2 hours the first day, and they're like, that's great, and then it's hard to do that. So maybe start out with a 10-minute workout. Just something you can do, and and you'll again set yourself up to win, right? Like just make it an attainable goal. What the name of the book is How Artists Work by Mason Curry. How artists work. And another great book about habits is Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's another really great book about just starting small. And what can you do to improve just 1% today? Just a 1% improvement, just these like small incremental things that you can do in your life because those small things add up, right?
Sure.
And again, it's like doing it. One of the great things that James Clear recommends in his book is pairing a habit with another thing you already do. So say every morning you put on the kettle to make coffee or a cup of tea, whatever it is. When you do that, when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, do 10 push-ups or read a chapter of part of a book or whatever it is, something else another goal that you want to accomplish, pair it with something that you already do every day. So you're more likely to do it. because you're matching it with something else. That's a very helpful tip as well.
Interesting. What was the name of that book?
James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Everybody writing this down, right? Atomic Habits and How Artists Work.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, you started posting some groove stuff on Facebook recently. You gonna do more of that too?
Yeah, I
Speaking of habits,
probably will. Yeah, I mean, I was working on a song, and it's a new song that I'm working on, and I just decided to, why don't I just put up what I'm playing?
Yep.
So I did, and so yeah, I'll probably do more of that. I'll probably do some more of some more playing.
Yeah. And of course, you had your trusty P bass and your B15 in the background.
That's right.
Now, there's a history with that B15.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share?
You can kind of see it back there. Yeah. So that is the Heritage B15. That's the Heritage one. That's not my dad's.
I was going to say the one you were playing in the video though was your dad's though, wasn't it?
That was my Heritage one.
Oh, it was. I thought it was your dad's. Ah.
You know what's interesting about my dad's B15 is that it's a solid state.
Oh.
It's a 70s one, and it's a what's the model of those?
The B15
NT
or NT.
NT. I think it's the NT.
Yeah.
The 70s one. Yeah.
Okay.
And I never knew that was what I had in my mind when I was little was like the B15. And then I went over to Andy Johns, who was his best friend. He had the tube one. And I was like, wait, this is kind of like the other amp, but this one looks funnier. Because it had the tubes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was over there. I was over playing at Andy's B15 when I first started playing bass with my first drummer I ever played with was Andy's son Evan Johns. Okay. So when we were jamming together over there, I was playing through Andy's B15, the tube one. But Dad's is a solid state.
Nice.
Interesting. How old were you when you first started playing, if you don't mind me asking?
I wanted to start playing when I was 12, but was kind of told no.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I was about 14 that I actually did. And it was Andy Johns that came over and gave me my first lesson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm glad I was told no, because it meant that it made me work for it. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Did Dad not want you getting into the music business, or is that?
Or he did, and he knew that saying no would turn into yes.
Maybe he knew what he was talking about. Maybe he knew what he was doing.
A little reverse psychology there.
Maybe a little reverse psychology. It worked. Whatever he did. Whatever he did worked.
That's awesome.
There's probably a few reasons why he wasn't into the idea of me doing it, considering the era he was a musician in.
Sure. Yeah.
And everything that goes into it not being the easiest road a lot of the time.
Yeah. I got to say, as a dad to two daughters, I think I would be I would definitely be encouraging, but I would be hesitant to say, pursue a career.
Here's all my vintage basses.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't want to share.
Here you go. Take your pick. But I did have one, obviously one daughter went into art as a tattoo artist. So, there's that. So, and she's doing very well actually, but yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. I remember trying to give them both guitar and bass lessons. And that was like, they just said, Dad, you're too much of a
I could see that would be really hard.
I hear it's tough anyway for parents to give their children lessons. Most of my musician friends have someone else give their kids lessons. I think the dynamics, it's just it's easier if someone else does it.
And that's eventually what we ended up doing, like piano lessons and violin lessons, which are stuff I'm not good at teaching. But I was just like, you know what? You need to go to somebody that is impartial on this. I'm way, I'd be sitting at dinner and I'd be like, did you practice your lesson before you go down? They'd be like, Dad, stop. anyways, hey, great question here. Do you prefer to be more rehearsed, nailed down, or do you often play on the spot, improv, when you're recording, when you're tracking?
Sure. So that depends. Like if I am tracking for a session that I got hired to do and I'm going into the studio, it's definitely something that I'm rehearsing ahead of time. More often than not, usually they'll send the song ahead of time. And that is something that like I'm making sure I know and I'm familiar with, have charted before I even step foot into that studio. So in that situation, definitely want to be prepared. But there have been times where they say, hey, we've got some extra time. Here's another song I'm working on. Want to check it out? Sure. Mm-hmm. So we'll do that and we'll have a play. You know, if there's time to do that, sure, that'll be more of like a fun kind of improvised thing. If it's me on my own, I'm normally just tracking as I write a lot of the time. There's a couple ways to do it. There's a way to like have the song already done and written, and then when you track, you're approaching it just like from an engineering perspective, and you're just tracking everything as if you would be if you were like in a studio with someone like an engineer or something. Sure. But what I've been doing lately is I use the computer to write, and I do so because, like I was saying earlier, with Logic, there's just so many sounds and just kind of fun things to play with that help inspire parts. It's fun to build parts, and those lead to different melodies, and so it's just fun to build tracks as I go, and I write as I go. That's been my process lately.
Okay. Are you normally writing with bass in hand, guitar in hand, or sitting at a keyboard? Or all three?
It varies. So what you saw online on Facebook, that was me writing on bass.
Okay.
That was me bass in hand. And it's interesting because I noticed that when I write on bass, it's harder for me to write vocals or lyrics because I'm just hearing the bass and I'm just like it's more bass centric. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes will start on guitar, or I'll start on the keyboard because I have an easier time hearing melodies, hearing vocals, and then the bass will come later because I'm a bass player. So once the bass is there, that's all I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm feeling. Yeah. So
do you ever write? I do this all the time. Do you ever write bass parts where you then go to like sing and rehearse the song with the band and you're like, oh crap, how do I play bass and sing this?
Like, wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like so unfun to like dumb down a bass part just for that reason. So that's why I never do it. But then it comes to bite you.
You gotta imagine, like, you gotta think how like guys like Eddie Lee does stuff like that. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, when Rush it's like, oh, now I gotta sing and play this stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
especially that kind of music too, where it's a lot of math.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was playing with Veruca Salt, I had a similar thing because the bass parts are written by the bass player, and the two singers were guitar players, and so but I was learning the bass lines and the vocals, and it was the first time that I experienced what you're talking about, Dom, where I was like, whoa, wait a minute here, because the bass lines are really like busier and a little bit. Yeah. Kind of all over the place, and just played by someone playing bass, not singing also. Mm-hmm. It's a great challenge though.
Yeah.
It was really fun to crack those codes.
Yeah. And especially when you do crack it, it's so rewarding.
It really is.
Now you got, you've got just both parts are so subconscious at that point. You really don't even think about it. It happens.
Yeah.
Which,
that is the best feeling.
Another great question here too. Why did you record 2 songs in French?
Hi, Amanda. So I have some friends actually who are in Quebec, and they've been helping me with this record and last single. And they recommended that they have a label up there, and they recommended that they said I would get more airplay up there. If I did a version in French, because they have to have a certain amount of content in French that's played up there. It's like if you've heard of Canadian content, CanCon, up in Canada, they have to play like a certain percentage of Canadian artists. So it's the same kind of thing in Quebec where they have to play a certain amount of material in French. So they thought I'd get more airplay up there if I did a couple in French. So I did, and they helped me. They helped me with that, and I recorded them. And sure enough, it's working out pretty well. Like the French version of London Nights is doing quite good up there. So it wouldn't have been the same if it was just the English version. So it's something fun and a fun challenge, and it's something different.
Did you actually learn to sing a song in French, or were you just kind of singing phonetically?
Well, I learned because they helped me translate it, right? And then gave me the meaning and stuff, and then helped me do a version of, I'm just basically like mimicking them a lot, but I know what it means. And I know little teeny weeny bits of, I speak Spanish, so I get kind of like the idea of some of it. My mom grew up speaking French, so I get the idea of it, but a lot of it is phonetic. Like I'll send it back to them, and they say, this part pronounce it more like instead of ah.
Okay.
So there's tweaking in there to make sure I sound like I kind of know what I'm doing.
I dug it. I remember hearing it. I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. No idea.
Are the French versions on the vinyl?
No.
Okay.
It's just online.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you first did that. I was like, this is really cool. I have no idea what you're singing, but it's really cool.
I don't know what I'm singing either. It's okay. Yeah, no, it's fun.
Cappy has one of your signature basses.
Oh, cool.
It was great. Sold it like a jacket.
Man, what the heck?
Come on, man.
I actually, so my signature bass does have a J neck, which I found to be more comfortable for a lot of people. So this is for something that's going to be out on the market. I wanted it something that would appeal to a lot of people. That's what people like about the J, I think, is it's easier to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, the signature has that. I do play my signature, so that would be the P bass with the J neck that I play. Otherwise, most of my P basses that you see back there, those are straight up P's, straight up P basses with a P neck.
With a P neck. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like a common thing. I remember back. Well, it's still a common thing, but I remember like you used to see a lot of guys playing. They would put a J neck. And you could always tell it was a J neck because it had the block inlays.
Right.
You know, that was always the telltale sign. I think, was it Duck Dunn that did that as well at one point? Like, I know his signature bass is a narrower neck, and I think Hutch actually does the same thing too. But it's I actually didn't realize that. I thought your signature was a P neck on it.
A straight P. Yeah. Well, I just after some research and talking to a few people, the reasons why people do like the J is because of that neck. And also if you're appealing to perhaps a younger group demographic as well, it might be easier, more appealing, more inclined to play it if it's easier to play.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's really fun. And then you get used to that. And then you go back to the old school way. It's like
yeah. Right. Like
do some hand stretches.
Yeah. Do you play any 5 at all, or is it always 4?
I do play some. I actually had to buy a 5-string one time because I was playing in a band that was just very I needed that 5th string to get those low. It was like super down tune stuff. So I bought a 5-string for that gig and did some 5 work, but it doesn't come into play that often.
Okay.
I'm usually good with a 4 from most of the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
But
are you having to do any like alternate tunings, like what dropped way down or anything?
Yeah, I do. More often than not, I'll do drop D, or I'll have the whole bass to E flat or something like that, E flat tuning. Sometimes it can get a little weirder, but for the most part, that's the extent for the stuff that I'm doing. To the extent of, sometimes C sharp Sometimes
Nice.
it's like,
Yeah.
I know some players are adopting without going to a 5-string, they're adopting going BEAD on a 4-string.
yeah.
So doing low B up to D instead of EADG.
Yeah. I've heard of that too. I haven't actually set it up like that, but it sounds like that could be appropriate too. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never done that either. I've always been too afraid to ruin my neck or something.
Yeah. You'd have to get a different, you'd have to get it set up properly.
Yeah.
Get a different net and
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah. It's just, I remember when I switched, and I'm kind of jealous now because I primarily play 5-string, but in my opinion, just a 4-string P bass is the sound.
Yeah.
And even the 5-string P basses, I've got a great Yamaha 5-string. It's a PJ setup, and it sounds great, but it's still it's not a 4-string P bass.
Is it the sound or the feel that you're?
It's funny. I think the feel makes it psychosomatic.
I think you're right. Yeah. I
know what I
get
mean?
that.
Like, I think you listen to a recording of it, and it's like, man, that sounds like a great P bass. But I think because I'm feeling a 5-string neck, it kind of comes back almost psychosomatic that it doesn't sound like a 4-string P bass to me. And so I know Dom and you, Eva, you were both like diehard 4-string players. So you have my always.
And I, interestingly enough, started on 5 actually.
Oh,
I was I was my uncle's bassist at the time was actually playing 6-string, so I thought 5 was like, it's fine, it's more standard or whatever. But I was just so into the low B and everything that offered. So yeah, I started on like a weird teal green, like tiger stripe looking thing. Like it was, I don't even know what the brand was. It was like Austin or something like that. But yeah, started on the 5 and then actually went to 4-string fretless, and then finally came around to like, oh wait, the rest of the world is onto this 4-string P thing. It's a lot better.
What's this Fender Precision?
Yeah, right.
4-string everyone's talking about.
Who's Leo Fender?
What's this?
You had an interesting visit to the folks down in Fullerton at a little while ago.
I did, yeah. So they helped me revive my dad had a 62 Fiesta Red Precision that went through a lot of different incarnations. He used it in the Creation. He was in a band called The Creation in the 60s. And there's pictures of him playing it, which is really cool because it's nice and shiny and new when he had it. And then a few years later, he played in a band called Ashton Gardner and Dyke, which was more of like a jazz kind of influence, like jazz fusion-y kind of thing. My dad was a total jazz head. So he tore the frets off the bass. This was in like 68, 69. He tore the frets off the bass and painted it black, all black on black.
No way. Wow.
So there's pictures of him playing that bass, and it looks like a totally different bass, but it's the same one.
Same bass,
no frets. So, and that was like, that was his baby. That was the bass that he wanted to be buried with. Interestingly, he's no longer with us. And my mom was like, well, first of all, you're going to be cremated. Secondly, that should go to Eva. Well, we're talking about it. Yeah. So, but that was how much that meant to him, right? That was like his pride and joy. No wonder he didn't want my grimy hands on it when I was a kid. But so eventually he actually stripped the black paint and restored it kind of back to its Fiesta Red. So it's just like a beat up bass that I had left in its case. My dad's been gone 20 years and I just kind of didn't touch it. It had the same strings that he put on it, like just left it exactly how he left it, kind of a museum piece kind of thing. Cause it was like it was his baby. And October was the 20th anniversary of my dad's death. And I decided that it was time to take it out of the case and start playing it again. And cause that's what it was meant for. So the folks at Fender, Jason Smith over there, went to him and just helped me get it up and running again. And it was actually really very kind of full circle cathartic experience, especially taking the bass back to where it came from.
Yeah,
Because Dad got it in England, he had it over in the UK and then bringing it back to the Fender headquarters. It was kind of a really special moment.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you keep the old strings on it?
I still got the strings, but I've still got the strings, but I did put some new ones on.
Nice. I was gonna say, when you busted it out, Jamerson was probably just like, yeah, it's for
but then the strings came off, and he was like, ah.
Yeah.
I remember Phil Chen, rest in peace. He was telling me a story about you've probably seen his bass, Dino, that white bass that he had, his Jamerson bass, and he's like, yeah, I haven't changed these strings since 1967.
Wow.
There he is.
Look what I dug out of my drawer was his business card, which are actually
picks. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Paparazzi.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, he was talking about how he had a couple of Jameson strings.
Like his actual strings that Jamerson used?
Yeah, like anytime Jameson never changed his string. So, but when he broke a string, he would change the string. And somehow I remember Phil and Bob Glob at Bass Player Live one year, they were talking about that in a master class. And Phil had said, yeah, I have a couple of Jameson strings, but I don't think he could use them because they were broken at that point. So he couldn't put them on his bass. But yeah, he never changed his never changed.
Ever.
Like 67, I think, is what he said is the last time he changed his strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny. I started getting back to P basses again after Phil had passed. I revisited Blow by Blow and the Rod Stewart recordings, mostly Blow by Blow though. And I started learning, jamming the tunes off of Blow by Blow with my 4-string P bass back here, and it's got flat wounds on it, and I'm listening to Phil and I'm playing the same thing. It's like there's no way to capture that vibe. Obviously, a lot of Phil's sound was in his hands as it is in most people's, but it was just kind of like, man, you could hear the percussiveness of that bass and those strings even back then through those recordings. It's like, no matter what I did here with, there was no way to duplicate it. It was just like, it was inherent in Phil in that bass. Pretty amazing stuff. Now, did Fender work on your dad's bass? Did they do any work to it, or?
Yeah, they did. They like the pickups needed some. They're all kind of needed some soldering and needed to be kind of making sound again.
Yeah.
So it's back up and running, and I've got it. I've been using it, and it's really nice to. It's just really nice to, it was made to be played, right?
Yes.
And so it's nice to have it back up and running and be playing it, and actually like being at a point where I'm like, I'm an adult now. I can. I'll be careful with it.
Well, that's just it. If there's anybody that should be the parent of that bass, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure Dad is smiling.
Yeah. And it's a new incarnation of it too, right? It's like it's the next generation, and it's seeing another day, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm grateful to Fender for awesome. Helping me out with that.
Is it still fretless or back to being fretted?
So I had them make me they made a neck, a fretted neck.
Oh, nice.
So the old neck is exactly how it was. Didn't do anything to that. It's exactly how Dad had it set up. And for me to actually, after a lot of debate, because the frets were taken off of it, it wasn't made as a fretless. It was just a really, like, my dad played the shit out of it, but it was a really kind of wonky.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It takes time to get used to it and get like the placements in a weird place. So it was after a lot of debate, it was decided that for me to actually use it and get a lot of use out of it and play it more, was to put a fretted neck on it.
Okay.
So they took all the specs, they measured everything, they duplicated the neck, just with frets on it, and I still have the fretless neck. So with Fender basses, you can pop necks on and off, no problem.
Yeah.
So I can always go back to the fretless neck, but I'm getting a lot of use out of it as with its new incarnation.
Yeah.
It's still Fiesta Red. I didn't paint it.
Awesome.
It's Fiesta Red beat up, but just with a neck that I'm my neck as opposed to my dad's neck.
Cool.
That's very cool.
Sure. Yeah.
That is a great story, and that's why I wanted you to tell that story, because I think it's just I don't know. I'm a dad. I've got a bunch of basses. You know what I mean? I hope someday my kids will. First of all, I hope they won't sell them for what I told my kids.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, but no, that's very cool. Very cool. So what's in the future? Like, you know, what's in your crystal ball?
It's hard to say. It's kind of just taking things step by step right now. Of course, there's goals to hopefully be back out on the road, continuing to create more music. I love doing playing on people's session work. I love doing all the remote stuff. So just more of that stuff, and you know, who knows? Hopefully, this year we'll see more folks back out there doing the touring thing. So that would be great.
Have you at some point, you know, we all kind of get to a certain point where we think, you know, obviously this is awesome what I'm doing, but I want to do this now. And for bass players, it seems like a lot of bass players go into producing. Have you ever given that thought? Like, maybe I don't want to go on the road and I want to start living in the studio a little bit more as a producer.
I feel my thought goes to, like, I feel like it would be fun to do like TV, like be in a band on a TV show or something like that. As an alternative to, you know, just doing something where you're, I know there's so many different fun things to do. But I never thought about producing, although I already kind of am doing it with my own stuff. And I'd like that idea. Sure. I like doing all the things. So, you know, maybe a little bit here, maybe a little bit there, work on a record there, do a TV show, summer tour. Do it all. Let's do it all.
Keep it diversified, as they say.
Totally.
You want to keep it diversified.
Totally.
Speaking of a band on TV, I finally watched Hired Gun the other night.
Oh.
It was super awesome. It was awesome. I know. I'm sad to admit that, but I was going through Amazon. I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, why have I never watched this? It was really cool.
Sounded like me there for a second, Tom. Oh my god.
I know. Oh my god.
So you watched it for the first time the other night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really, really cool.
It's, you know, it's funny because I've seen it a bunch of times, obviously, you know, with Eva and Rudy, and, you know, just it's just gives you such a, I think, was it Phil? Who was it that actually, when he described it, I'm trying to remember, it might have been Phil. Is it Phil X? That said, you have a front row seat to, like, one of the most, you have a front row seat to the insight of, like, all these really famous rock stars, but it's a front row seat. You're not necessarily in the same vehicle. I forget how he described it. It was so perfectly well said. But it really does. It gives us a view of what sidemen and side ladies and musicians work with when they're working with, you know, major touring acts and rock stars like Alice Cooper or Pink, or, you know, or Bon Jovi and things like that. But the thing that I got out of it, like, I sometimes will make the mistake of, like, I'll watch TV in bed quite a bit, and I notice, like, that movie, Standing in the Shadows. Like I make the mistake of sometimes trying to watch those when I'm laying in bed.
Oh yeah,
trying to fall asleep.
All I wanted to do after watching it was go tour. That's all I wanted to do.
It's like, you know, next thing you know, it's like my foot starts tapping. My wife's laying next to me, like, will you sit still? Like, off, would you? But my point being is, it's so inspirational.
Yeah.
For us to watch that, you know, that it's like you got to watch it more than just once, Don. I guarantee.
Yeah, there's a lot to absorb, sure.
But yeah, it just kind of, you know, as musicians, it makes us want to work harder and play more and be inspired. And yeah, so if that's the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is thank you for doing that, because it was a really cool movie, and it was great to see behind the scenes what you guys do. So
yeah, it's an interesting take for sure, because it's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what you see on the show, what happens on stage.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that those stories are out there as well.
Yeah. It's very inspirational too, to see like just the perfect puzzle piece that you are for Pink's band, and just how long of a journey each individual player of that whole puzzle, you know, they all come together, and it's like, it's just so cool to hear everyone's. I mean, that was just like a little take of, you know, a handful of artists and their journeys, but just like, yeah, just hearing how everyone has come through the paces of like being to where they are now is really, really cool.
Yeah. And we were all hearts and rainbows talking about our
yeah, that was all
Mark and Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it gives, you know, it also gives hope to people just starting out that want to get into being a side player, you know, or a studio person. It does. It gives some hope that this can be done. It definitely can be done. There's a shit ton of hard work that goes into it, and perseverance, and, you know, let's face it, years of hardship. You know, you definitely go through hardship and sacrifices and things like that, but it can be done. And I thought it was a great video. All those, like, between that, Standing in the Shadows, which I cry every time I watch Standing in the Shadows. I was watching a Bob Babbitt video actually yesterday, and you know, stuff like that. And then there's actually another one, the story about Muscle Shoals.
Love that one.
Yep, that's a good one too.
Love that one. Yeah.
That and the other one is the Wrecking Crew.
It's Wrecking Crew one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I remember going to MI. Tommy Tedesco he'd be in MI every day, you know, and he'd just come in to visit and offer words of encouragement. And I remember, like, the one quote I remember from Tommy was about a gig: either makes a ton of money, it's a ton of fun, or it's going to help your career. He said, if it doesn't fulfill any one of those three criteria, don't even bother taking it. And it was like, okay. But nobody really knew who Tommy was. Like, we knew, yeah, all right, this guy with the Greek fisherman's cap that drives the Cadillac, the Cadillac with the plate that says number one, or used to be number one. But it was like, we didn't realize this guy played guitar on just about every television show, and, you know, it's like you realize the impact he had on us listening as musicians, or even as kids, you know, listen to the theme from MASH growing up. Who would have thought that, you know?
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's this, I don't want to call him a regular dude, but he's a regular dude that, you know, just made a really great living playing music in Hollywood. And, you know, I could ask him how he played the theme song for MASH just as quickly as I could ask him, hey, what's a really good Italian restaurant to go to in West Hollywood? You know, you'd be like, oh, you want to go to this place, Dean? So, anyways, that's, like I said, it gives us hope that this can be done, and you can work at it.
I think perseverance was the big word that you used, I think.
Perseverance. Yeah.
It's a good word for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I mean, let's face it. I lived in LA for about 10 years, close to 10 years, and did all my auditions and this and that. And I remember getting to LA with other people that we all went to MI at the same time. So what's that? 91 is when I went to LA. So that's going on almost 30 years. I don't even think I'm that old. Jeez. But they're just like, I mean, 30 years down the road, they're starting to come into, they've been in it for a while, but they're starting to come into their own in terms of recognition and playing with certain people. It's like, sometimes it takes that long and you just got to stick with it,
Mm-hmm.
So,
Can't get out of line. Got to stay in line.
No, stay in line. Stay in line. Exactly. And I totally veered off the subject that I was trying to stay on there. I don't know what the heck I was talking about, but anyways, I'm having another senior moment. Sorry. We're at the mark here. So if anybody has any last questions you want to chime in for Eva, fire away now or forever hold your peace. And Eva, will you come back and join us again?
Absolutely. I would love to anytime.
We need like SNL does those jackets for people that do like the 5 different episodes or whatever. You're close to a jacket.
Maybe we can start with a sweatshirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, just kidding.
Burn.
What did we call me earlier? The hoodie master? The hoodie man?
Hoodie man.
I promise I will get you a hoodie. I promise.
No, it's all good.
So, Eva, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's always awesome talking with you, and hopefully either I'll get out that way at some point and we can have coffee, or you get out on the road and come out this way and we'll have coffee here in Boston, one way or the other.
And thank you for these awesome presets, because they sound amazing.
Welcome. Thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Everyone go play through these.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyways, all thank you so much for joining us. What can I say?
Wait, show the vinyl again. This is like a late night TV show.
Yeah.
We gotta.
Yes. Vinyl for sale on my website.
It is for sale on your website in vinyl, downloads, CDs,
t-shirts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Go evagardner.com, correct?
That's it.
All right. So be sure to get your copy. It is well worth the listen. It's going right back on the turntable for this coming Sunday again for the family listening. So what was I going to say? So in 2 weeks, we don't have SVT time next week, but the following week, I forget what the date is, but we will have Rudy Sarzo on.
All right.
Rudy's another SVT time alumni as well. So he's going to be joining us, and be sure to chime in for that. And what can I say? Be safe, be healthy, and play more bass, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.